Well, thank you so much for joining us. So tell us what you say, very reliable law enforcement source told you about a possible suspect in the case.
Sure. So after almost 4 decades in this business, I've collected a few friends at the FBI and in local law enforcement all over the country. And the source that I have is impeccable. And he said that not only were the cameras smashed, plural cameras smashed, so that the suspect likely knew about the locations of them, but that the car belonging to the sister of Savannah Guthrie, Annie Guthrie, was towed, impounded, and taken into evidence. And that, and this is the wording, it's very important. The wording is very important. He said they now believe the son-in-law may be the prime suspect. Those are the words. Son-in-law may be the prime suspect at this point.
Nancy Guthrie has been gone for over a month, snatched right out of her Catalina Foothills home. But today, the investigation just took a huge turn. We're done asking where she is. Now, we're staring right at the man who took her. Sheriff Chris Nanos and the feds just dropped some extremely specific details on who we're looking for. Guy walks up to her door geared up in a tactical suit and ski mask, thinking he's invisible. Problem is, the disguise gave him away. He left a trail of DNA and visual clues, including a very distinct right wrist tattoo caught on tape. So, who is this guy? And how did his own prep work end up nailing him? Everything I'm breaking down comes straight from sheriff's updates, federal behavioral profiles, and verified lab reports. Check the tape of him walking up to the door, and the first thing that hits you is the prep work. This guy clearly spent a long time figuring out how to beat the forensics. He's in a full tactical bodysuit, thick gloves, maybe even double-layered. According to some investigators, he's covered head to toe, desperate to make sure not a single hair or drop of sweat hits that floor. He was trying to be a ghost, wanted to breeze in and out without leaving a speck of biological proof. But here's where the arrogance kicks in. You cover the body but forget the face, and that's exactly where he slipped up. Retired FBI profiler Jim Clemente says this guy made a massive amateur error. He threw on a dark ski mask to dodge the cameras, but he clearly doesn't get how modern forensics work. That mask? It had huge cutouts, eyes wide open to the air, eyebrows showing, and biggest problem of all? His mouth and lower face were partially exposed. He wasn't wearing a surgical mask underneath, didn't tape his mouth shut, just wore a standard winter knit with holes in it. Now, let's break down what that actually means for a crime this heavy. He didn't just pop in, grab a valuable, and bolt in 2 minutes. He was inside that house for 41 straight minutes. 41 minutes of moving, struggling, hunting. Whatever went down in there, his heart had to be pounding, adrenaline spiking. And when you're amped up like that, you breathe heavy, you pant, you're exhaling hard. Here's the thing. Every time he exhaled during those 41 brutal minutes, he was spraying microscopic saliva and moisture right into the air. He was basically a walking DNA sprinkler, dusting his genetic code all over the scene. He thought the gloves and suit had him covered. But pros know DNA isn't just about fingerprints on a doorknob. It comes from the invisible mist from your breath, settling on the hardwood, the couch, the victim. By leaving his mouth open, he handed the lab techs a biological goldmine. Every heavy breath he took in that hallway, every pant while he was dragging or forcing her out, was a signature he couldn't erase. And the forensic nightmare for this guy doesn't stop at his breath. Because that cheap mask let us see something else. Those HD security cams picked up some very specific physical traits. The video gives us a crystal clear shot of his eyes, picking up the specific arch of his brows. You can even make out the shadow of a mustache on his lip, which is a massive clue regarding his build and grooming. We aren't dealing with some slick, hairless pro who waxed from head to toe to stop trace evidence from dropping. This guy is sporting facial hair, full lashes, and heavy brows. Why is that a gold mine for investigators? Simple. People lose hair all day long without even knowing it. Throw in the adrenaline of a high-stakes break-in or an abduction, where things get physical fast, and all that rubbing and scrambling makes you shed follicles at an accelerated rate. A lash hits the rug. A whisker lands on a shirt, or a brow hair gets snagged in the weave of the sofa. Every single one of those strands holds a root, and inside that microscopic bulb is a full nuclear DNA profile. He wrapped up his limbs but left his mug exposed. A rookie error that is going to cost him his freedom. If we break down exactly how this nightmare unfolded, we need to zero in on the precise second his attempt at stealth falls apart. He rolls up to the house, bundled in layers of black gear. Thinking he has totally beaten the perimeter security, he marches right up to the front entryway. He has got such tunnel vision on the door that he completely ignores the lens tracking him. Those smart doorbells are stealthy, usually sinking right into the molding, but they record every detail in crisp high definition. For a split second that feels like forever, he is just standing there, totally oblivious. Then, something snaps him out of it. Maybe a glint off the glass in the moonlight caught his eye. Or it could have been the tiny status light proving the feed was live. The realization slams into him like a freight train. You can practically pinpoint the frame where his brain registers the disaster. It finally dawns on him. He's on camera. A real pro would have scrubbed the mission instantly, spun around, and disappeared into the dark to cut his losses. But this guy makes a move that proves he is anything but a mastermind. Rather than backing off, he makes the idiotic decision to go to war with the hardware. He steps back and scrambles for something to block the view, grabbing a branch from the landscaping bushes nearby. He thrusts his right arm out toward the lens in a frantic, sloppy bid to blind the digital eye, documenting his crime. He genuinely believes this fixes it, that he is saving himself from a cell. But what happens next is the smoking gun of the whole federal case. As he stretches that arm up to jam the leaves over the sensor, the physics of his outfit turn against him. That sharp jerk and the weird reach angle drag the sleeve of his tactical gear way up his arm. A massive gap opens up right between the top of his glove and his jacket cuff. In that heartbeat, the high-resolution cam grabs something way more damning than just his face. It records a dark, unmistakable marking on his bare wrist. When the tech team froze that frame and enhanced the zoom, the result was indisputable. Sitting right there on the inside of his wrist, plain as day, is a specific tattoo. We aren't looking at a scratch or a pixel artifact. That is a permanent, one-of-a-kind identifier inked right into his flesh. In the high-stakes game of criminal profiling, distinct ink is practically the holy grail, ranking right behind a direct DNA hit. Perps can torch their clothes. They can shred their backpacks. They can even melt the soles of their boots to erase the tread patterns. They might buzz their hair right down to the scalp or grow a massive beard to totally reshape their bone structure. But ink stamped right on the tender underside of a wrist is a nightmare to erase without leaving a gnarly, obvious scar that would tip off anyone who knows the guy. That one detail blows a hole in the mastermind theory we were breaking down. The guy poured endless hours into mapping out this violent grab. He piled on layers of black gear. He strapped on a heavy mask and grabbed thick winter gloves specifically to keep his prints and DNA off everything. Yet, in a split second of raw, unfiltered panic, he completely blanks on the permanent artwork etched into his own skin. He did all that work covering up, only to flash his biggest identifier right at the feds. You think he just froze up, or did he seriously forget the ink was there? Drop your take in the comments. When you analyze the moves made by felons working under the cover of night, there is one golden rule every crook knows. You have to disappear into the background. If you are running a high-stakes job at 2 in the morning, you go matte black and ditch anything shiny. The goal is to stay invisible to cars, nosy neighbors, and high-definition cams. But when we look at the kit Nancy Guthrie's kidnapper picked out, we find a mistake that defies all criminal logic. Dude walks up in a tactical suit and ski mask to stay hidden, yet he decides to haul a backpack that basically screams for attention. Surveillance clearly shows the bag on his back had these blindingly bright reflective strips. We are talking the kind of safety gear night runners use so they do not get flattened by traffic. Rocking a backpack that flares up in the light during a midnight break-in is next-level stupid. It is the literal opposite of stealth. Every time a streetlight buzzes or headlights sweep the block, those strips would light up like a flare in the dark. That weird detail sent cops chasing a specific lead. At first, the law went hard on tracking where that bag came from. They recognized the label and figured he probably strolled into a Walmart a few days prior and bought it fresh. Agents and local cops spent weeks digging through mountains of sales logs, watching endless checkout tapes, and tracking every card used for that bag nearby. Here is the kicker. After dumping massive manpower into the retail angle, the case took a sharp left. Sheriff Chris Nanos just dropped a bombshell about that evidence. He said they are pretty sure the perp did not buy that pack from a store at all. Scouring the sales data did not give them the break they wanted, so the guy probably got that shiny bag some other way. Police are now betting on the second-hand market. Could be a thrift shop find, maybe a yard sale snag, or he scored it off someone on an online marketplace. There is also a solid chance someone else bought it new and gifted it to him, or he just swiped it from a roommate or relative who had no clue what he was up to. That flips the whole investigation on its head. Tracking a store buy is easy digital trails and cameras. Tracking a cash swap for used gear at a weekend swap meet is a detective's worst nightmare. Now I am wondering about his funds. If you are plotting $1 million crime, why use traceable hand-me-down gear? Consider the insane gamble of breaking in and snatching an 84-year-old lady. Get caught pulling a stunt like this, and you're looking at spending every remaining day of your life behind bars. With stakes that high, you'd assume the guy would drop serious cash on sterile, top-tier gear, completely untraceable and fresh out of the box. But no, he's piecing together a disguise from thrift store trash that actually makes him easier to spot. That specific mistake backs up the psychological profile authorities are building. We aren't dealing with some flush, high-level pro with a bottomless bank account. This guy is strapped for cash, all over the place mentally, and making decisions that make zero sense. He was dying to play the part of a special ops soldier, but using bargain bin, shiny equipment just shows he's a frantic rookie watching his whole sloppy plan fall apart in real time. Nowadays, when the feds break down surveillance video, they're looking way past the outfit or the face covering. They analyze the actual mechanics of how the subject moves. Detectives pore over the raw clips for hours, going frame by frame to get inside the guy's head. They're checking his stride, how he stands, and how he shifts his weight around. For this investigation, the porch cam actually gives us a really solid read on the intruder's physique. Sure, he's draped head to toe in thick black combat gear, but all that cloth can't mask the basic frame underneath. The breadth of his chest, how his shoulders take up space, and the heavy way he plants his feet tell a specific story. You also have to factor in the physical demands of what actually went down that's crucial here. He spent 41 minutes inside, controlling the scene the whole time before dragging a grown adult out the door. Overpowering an 84-year-old lady might not seem like it takes Navy SEAL training, but knocking someone out and hauling their dead weight any real distance will wear you out fast. Limp bodies are brutally heavy, especially when you're maneuvering them out of a house, down a long driveway, and into a car quietly without causing a scene. That takes serious core strength and leverage. Basically, we're not talking about some scrawny weakling here. Judging by where he stands next to the standard door molding, the profilers at the Bureau are certain this is an adult male with a big, stocky build. And he knows that he's got the bulk and the swagger to physically overpower someone without hesitation. Watch when he blindly swings that stick at the doorbell cam. You get a good look at the dense muscle in his forearm and the wide, powerful set of his shoulders. Pulling off a kidnapping like this takes a toll, but he didn't collapse or stumble off panting when it was over. Profilers take all those physical clues and use them to narrow down his age bracket. If you really study his body language in the clip, it's obvious he doesn't have that twitchy, nervous energy you see in teens or guys in their early 20s. His movements are heavier, grounded, and scary in how calculated they are. This is a guy who's been around the block enough to try and execute a structured plan. Even if he messed up the forensics big time, looking at the other end of the age scale, he's definitely not pushing 60. The smooth, quick way he snaps toward that lens, plus the endurance needed to commit a felony over nearly 3/4 of an hour, and the brute force used at the end rule out any elderly suspects completely. There's no sign of bad knees, stiff joints, or arthritis holding him back. He doesn't walk with that careful, hesitant shuffle you see in older folks. He charges ahead with the force of a predator who knows exactly how to use his size to hurt people. Retired FBI profiler Jim Clement notes, all these specific physical signs point straight to a clearly defined age group. The detectives on the case are convinced this John Doe is a male between 30 and 40. He is definitely old enough to have that cold, hard focus, but he remains young enough to keep the raw, explosive energy required to actually execute such a terrifying abduction, telling us he is operating right at the absolute peak of his physical prime. He stands at the deadly crossroads of peak strength and dark ambition, making him an incredibly dangerous, highly capable hunter who is actively stalking the dark streets. Right now, shifting gears from the physical evidence to the suspect's mind, the story takes a darker turn. In almost every standard kidnapping case the feds work, the main goal is money and the method is silence. A pro who snatches a high-profile target knows silence is his best weapon. They set up a secure, untraceable back channel to the family or the authorities. Their first rule is always the same. Do not call the cops and absolutely do not talk to the press. They want to grab the cash and fade into the shadows without a national spectacle. The hostage is just leverage to them, and they are terrified of the heat from a federal investigation. But the man who took Nancy Guthrie did the exact opposite of what a smart crook would do. He completely shredded the rulebook for a ransom negotiation. Instead of a private encrypted text to the family asking for a quiet payout, he drafted emails and sent them straight to the local CBS station and the gossip site TMZ. He intentionally put his own crime in the spotlight. He dropped a chillingly specific detail in those notes to prove he was really in the house. He described the victim's unique watch perfectly. That detail proved the notes were real, making his move to hit the media even scarier. He chose to broadcast his leverage to millions rather than keeping it strictly between him and the family. That specific move tells the profilers exactly who this guy is in the real world. He isn't a disciplined soldier executing a business deal. He is a deeply insecure narcissist, starving for attention. In his daily life, he's likely a nobody. He is someone who feels invisible, a total ghost in his social world. Snatching the innocent mother of a famous news anchor was his twisted way of making the whole country look right at him. He was desperate for the national media to obsess over his actions. More than anything, he wanted to cause pain and watch the fallout live on TV. He wanted to sit back safely and watch Savannah Guthrie cry on air, knowing he was the center of her nightmare. This matters because it flips the script on how the cops have to hunt him. A smart criminal in it for the money lies low and avoids risks once the job is done. However, a volatile psycho driven by fame and a god complex will keep seeking validation. He takes huge, irrational risks just to feel relevant and feared. By emailing major news outlets, he created a digital trail for the cyber unit to follow. He put his entire freedom on the line, risking federal charges and tracking just to brag about his sick feet to the world. He traded his safety for a brief moment of infamy. It shows a terrifying arrogance that blinds him to the tech dragnet closing in on him. His desperate need to be seen as a powerful threat is his fatal flaw. He could have remained a ghost, a scary mystery demanding a fortune in silence. Instead of laying low, he was chasing the spotlight and front-page notoriety. He really wanted to feel like some kind of dark superstar. He skipped the police and went straight to the media circus. Step into his shoes for a second. Does this look like a master plan for cash or just a twisted hunger for fame? What's your take on it? At the end of the day, this deep-dive psych profile gives us a crystal-clear look at a desperate guy whose giant, Glassjaw ego is bound to trip him up again, eventually landing him in a federal cell for the rest of his days. When you stack the forensics against the profile, you see a dude who was dying to be seen as a criminal mastermind. But the reality? He is total amateur hour. And right now, his weak mental state is cracking wide open under the heavy pressure of a massive federal manhunt. Retired FBI profiler Jim Clement made it crystal clear this suspect isn't some disciplined pro who can just slide back into his 9-to-5 after a major kidnapping. Rookies at this level always tip their hand before they make a move. And they always leak that heavy guilt once the deed is done. Long before he ever set foot on that lot in the Catalina foothills, his behavior beforehand likely gave him away to anyone who was actually paying attention. He was probably drowning in financial stress or personal drama, and he almost certainly bragged about a fix in the works. He might have dropped a hint to a coworker, a buddy, or a relative that his whole world was about to flip. He might have insinuated a big windfall was coming, or that his mountain of debt was about to be wiped clean. He truly believed he'd pulled off the perfect scheme to make that fantasy real. But then, 10 days after the nightmare abduction, the authorities totally wrecked his false sense of safety. The FBI and Sheriff Chris Nanos officially dropped that high-def doorbell footage for the whole country to see. Just like that, his masked face, his build, that shiny backpack, and that one-of-a-kind tattoo on his right wrist were blasted on every TV screen in America. Picture the sheer panic he felt the second he saw his own sloppy, nervous self on the evening news. Because of that, the way he's acting now has definitely shifted in a big, obvious way. The crushing stress of knowing thousands of cops are hunting him down is impossible to hide from the folks he sees every day. He's showing all the textbook signs of total paranoia right now. He might have suddenly banged out sick from work for a few days straight, faking a flu or a family crisis just to dodge talking to anyone. He might have packed up and skipped town entirely, trying to put miles between himself and where it went down. Or, here's the kicker, he's acting super weird about his ride. Police are combing through hundreds of thousands of cars looking for the exact one used in the snatch. He knows for a fact his wheels are a rolling crime scene. Odds are he's scrubbing the interior with bleach right now, trying to kill any trace of DNA. He might have stashed the car deep in a garage, tossed a tarp over it, or even tried a frantic DIY paint job in the dead of night. These huge behavioral changes are gonna bury him. A guy doesn't just turn into a paranoid wreck without someone close picking up on it. A wary wife, a puzzled roommate, or a sharp-eyed neighbor has surely seen him pacing the floor, glued to the news updates, or scrubbing his trunk like a maniac at 3 a.m. He's a bundle of raw nerves, one slip-up away from getting busted. He can't keep this act up forever, and eventually, that intense pressure is going to snap his mind in two. He's stuck in a hell of his own creation, scared to death that his next move brings the feds right to his front door. When you zoom out and look at the whole scope of this horrific abduction, the story flips from a scary mystery to a targeted manhunt. We started this deep dive staring at a shadow on a quiet porch in the Catalina foothills. He figured he'd wiped his identity clean. He really believed that heavy dark clothing and winter gloves were a magic shield against modern tracking tech. He couldn't have been more wrong. That doorbell camera was watching, recording the exact second his fantasy crumbled. He left a breadcrumb trail a mile wide, giving detectives everything they need to map out his entire psyche and physical build. Every single clue that's been picked apart so far highlights a suspect who completely lost control of his own violent game. He marched into that sleepy suburb convinced he was some kind of tactical genius. He genuinely believed he'd pull off the perfect crime and vanish into the night without a scratch. That brings us to the massive biological mess he left behind. He wore a mask with huge cutouts, basically spraying his DNA all over that house for 41 straight minutes. His heavy, panicked breathing literally handed the lab techs his microscopic signature. On top of that, He let those HD cameras get a crystal clear look at his eyes, his brow ridge, and that dark mustache. Those details shatter any chance he had of staying a faceless phantom. It hands the behavioral analysis team exactly what they need to pinpoint his build, pegging him as a fit male between 30 and 40 years old. Here's the kicker. His gear and his panic show us a guy who is sloppy and running on desperation. He brought a used backpack with bright reflective tape to a stealth mission in the dead of night. That one move screams that he's low on cash and has zero tactical sense. Then, he panicked and reached for the lens, flashing a very specific dark tattoo right on the inside of his wrist. This is the part that really sticks with me. You can wear a dozen masks, but your ego and sloppy errors will always give you away. He worked so hard to cover up, only to serve his most identifying mark to the FBI on a silver platter. Plus, his desperate need for fame is wrecking his chances of getting away with it. Mailing ransom notes to a local news station and a gossip site proves he's addicted to the spotlight. He's dying for the whole country to know what he's capable of. He gets a sick thrill watching the family grieve on the news because he's a total amateur at heart. The intense heat from this nationwide manhunt is shredding his nerves right now. He's holed up somewhere, scrubbing his car until his hands bleed, ghosting his job, and acting super sketchy around his friends and family. Someone in his circle is definitely watching this meltdown happen in real time. This deadly game of hide and seek has an expiration date. The public holds the final piece of the puzzle to crack this case wide open. Police are just waiting for that one tip from a weirded-out neighbor or a scared coworker who puts two and two together. The real lesson here isn't just about the ink or the genetics. It's that the criminal mastermind is a myth. People think these guys are invisible supervillains, but they're just flawed humans. They panic, and their ego leaves a map. One bare wrist or a loose mask can destroy months of planning. We've broken down the profile. The wrist ink, the visible mustache, that thrift store backpack, and the hunger for fame. But I want your take. Which slip-up is going to be the nail in his coffin? Let me know in the comments. Chief Nano said they're combing through hundreds of thousands of cars to find the getaway ride. The DNA is processing. The walls are closing in. It's not about if Tattoo Man slips up again, it's just a matter of when. Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you got value out of this deep dive, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I truly appreciate the support. Catch you in the next video.
The chilling abduction of Nancy Guthrie serves as a haunting reminder that while darkness may attempt to hide, it can never truly extinguish the light of justice. Many believe in the criminal mastermind, a phantom who operates without a trace. But as this case reveals, that is a dangerous myth. No matter how many masks a person wears or how many layers of tactical gear they shroud themselves in, they cannot erase their humanity or the flaws that come with it. This story isn't just about forensics. It's a powerful lesson in accountability. The suspect spent weeks planning for every technical detail, yet he was undone by his own panic and ego. A single breath, a forgotten tattoo, or a flashy, cheap backpack became the breadcrumbs leading back to his door. It proves that evil is inherently disorganized and that arrogance is always its own undoing. Beyond the investigation, there is a deeper call to action for all of us. Justice isn't just the job of the FBI, it lives in the vigilance of the community. It's the neighbor who notices a change, the friend who speaks up, and the collective refusal to let a predator remain a ghost. Let us remember, truth has a way of breathing through the cracks of even the most perfect plan. In the end, the shadows always flee when we stand together.